Okay, so I would definitely say that this book was compelling. Like I said, I won't draw out all the brain talk, but he talked a lot about studies with brain waves in your right hemisphere versus your prefrontal cortex. And he talked about how people with disorders, like bipolar disorder and depression and ADHD, can sometimes help in creative processes. It depends what process he was talking about, like the one versus two. But I thought that was kind of interesting. He includes studies, like I said, and statistics, which fulfills my discipline's need, science, for ethos. And so he did put that in there. Of course, that's not the points I'm hitting on because ethos to me doesn't leave that long of an impression on my brain as much as pathos does. And he included a lot of pathos. And that's kind of the interesting part that I'm telling you guys. Some of the stories he shared was really cool, that more we can relate to. And so he said that the guy who invented masking tape, he was actually he sold sandpaper, and he wanted something to tape on the cars that were being painted without ripping the paint off again. And so something as simple as that, you have a problem that needs to be solved, it needs insight. And so he sold sandpaper, and he said, just take the sand part off and let's make some kind of tape. And it went into detail about how he rolled it up and how his boss told him, like, stop wasting your time on this because you're a sandpaper salesman, like, you need to be realistic. And he just kept developing it until it was really great. And then his boss kind of had to realize that it was a better product, and they ended up selling more of that than sandpaper. And so that was one instance. But another one was that sticky notes were invented in, kind of not invented in church, but were thought up in church by the guy who, he wanted some kind of tape that wouldn't rip paper, but he could put paper on it. So it was a bookmark that stayed, and they called it a sticky note. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then Yo-Yo Ma, which is a musician, he plays the cello. He's at the end of the book, and they talked about how he felt the music, kind of, and I think that's really relatable. I actually play the trombone. I'm sure you guys play instruments too. But anyway, yeah, he feels the music, so that's kind of a different kind of creativity. He takes what he's learned and he makes it kind of his own, and he doesn't think about it. So it's more the first way of creativity, and I'm sure hearing everyone else's collaboration kind of goes with it. And then my favorite story was the Clay Marzo story, and I've never heard of this guy because, of course, we live in the Midwest. But maybe you've heard of him if you live nearby the ocean or something. But he was a surfer who had Asperger's, and the book really hit on when Jonah Lehrer, the author, was interviewing him. He just was so better spoken when he was in the water surfing, and that's all he did, and that's all he focused on. And so that was an instance where his disorder made him the best at what he does. And yeah, that was so cool. I had to look him up after I read that chapter because I thought that was really interesting. And some of the quotes the author talked to him about, it was almost like he didn't feel good speaking on land, and then once he was in the water he spoke better. But that's kind of he invented new moves, and he had a lot of creativity that kind of came from that. So I thought that was something really compelling and cool that we could learn from the book. And then, yeah.